It was a bright, warm afternoon. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and everything seemed perfect. The small church was decorated beautifully with white flowers, soft lights, and golden ribbons. The guests were dressed in their best clothes, smiling and talking quietly while they waited. It was Mark's wedding day, a day he had been looking forward to for months. Mark stood at the front of the church, wearing a black suit, looking nervous but happy. He was about to marry Vanessa, a woman he had met just a year ago. Everyone said they made a lovely couple. Vanessa was kind, beautiful, and always knew the right thing to say. Mark had fallen in love with her quickly. After losing his wife years ago, he thought he would never find love again. But then Vanessa came into his life like sunshine after a long storm. Everyone believed this wedding was the beginning of a new, happy chapter for Mark. His friends were happy for him. His relatives were excited. The music started playing softly. In the background, everything felt magical, just like a movie. But there was one person who wasn't smiling. One person who didn't look excited. It was Mark's 12-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan sat in the front row, wearing a gray suit and a red tie. His hair was neatly combed, and his small hands were holding the program tightly. But if you looked closely, you could see something wasn't right. He kept glancing around, his eyes full of worry. His face looked serious, too serious for a child at a wedding. Ethan had been quiet all morning. He didn't talk much during breakfast. He didn't laugh with the cousins who came to visit. Even when Mark hugged him and said, "Big day for us, huh, champ?" Ethan just nodded. Mark thought maybe his son was feeling sad about the changes coming, or maybe he missed his mom. But that wasn't the reason at all. Inside Ethan's mind, a storm was raging. He had a secret. A big, heavy secret that he didn't know how to carry. For weeks, he had tried to ignore it. He told himself it couldn't be true. But as the wedding day came closer, he knew he had to do something. He couldn't let his dad marry Vanessa. Not because he didn't like her, but because he had found out something terrifying about her. But what could a 12-year-old do at a wedding full of adults? Who would believe him? He had tried to talk to his father before, but Mark always smiled and said, "Ethan, you just need time. Vanessa loves us both." Ethan had stopped trying after that. But the truth didn't go away. It stayed with him, growing heavier every day, as the guests settled in their seats and the music grew louder. Ethan's heart began to beat faster. He felt sick to his stomach. He looked at his dad, standing at the altar with hope in his eyes, and he felt pain. He didn't want to hurt his father, but he also didn't want him to get hurt by someone pretending to love him. Suddenly, the doors of the church opened wide, and there she was, Vanessa. She walked in wearing a long white dress with lace and pearls. Her hair was perfect, and her smile lit up the room. People whispered about how beautiful she looked. Mark's eyes filled with emotion. But Ethan didn't see a beautiful bride. He saw someone hiding a dark truth as she walked down the aisle slowly. Ethan's hands shook. Inside his jacket pocket, he had something important, something that could stop everything. He had thought about this moment over and over. Should he say something? Should he stay quiet? Should he wait until after the wedding? But every time he saw his dad smiling at Vanessa, he knew he couldn't wait. The music reached its soft end. Vanessa stood next to Mark. The priest opened his book. Everyone stood. The ceremony was about to begin, but Ethan wasn't standing. He was frozen in his seat. His eyes moved from his father to Vanessa and back again. His heart pounded in his chest like a drum. He knew this was the moment. This was the last chance. He looked down at the envelope in his hand. Inside were photos, papers, and something he had recorded. He didn't want to be the one to ruin the day. But if he didn't act now, everything would be ruined anyway just later, and much worse. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody imagined what would happen next. But deep in his heart, Ethan was ready. He had made his decision, and everything was about to change. Ethan didn't sleep much the night before the wedding. He kept staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the sound of his own heartbeat. The house was quiet, but his mind was loud. He had made up his mind he would stop the wedding. But even now, he was scared. Scared no one would believe him. Scared he might be wrong. But deep down, he knew he wasn't. It had all started about 3 weeks ago. Ethan had come home early from school one day because of a half-day. He entered the house quietly and heard Vanessa talking on the phone. She was in the kitchen, facing away from the door, speaking in a low voice. At first, Ethan didn't think much of it till he heard her say something strange. She said, "Don't worry, he has no idea. The money will be mine soon." Just like the last time. Ethan's eyes went wide. Who was she talking about? Was she talking about his dad or someone else? He didn't want to believe it. Vanessa had always acted sweet, too sweet. In fact, she brought him gifts, baked cookies, smiled at him all the time. But Ethan never felt safe around her. Something about her felt fake, like a mask. After that day, he started watching her more closely. When she left the room, he'd peek at her phone. When she stepped out, he'd check her purse. He didn't even know what he was looking for, but what he found shocked him. In a small zipped pouch in her handbag, Ethan discovered something terrifying. 3 different IDs. Each had her photo but with different names. Vanessa Moore, Sarah Klein, Rachel Dennis, who had 3 different names. And why did she have wedding photos with 3 different men? His hands trembled as he put everything back without a sound. The next day, he used his school laptop to search for the names and faces he had seen. It took hours. He stayed up late, pretending to sleep while digging through news articles and social media. And then he found it. An old news article from 2 years ago. A woman, using fake identities, had married 2 rich businessmen in different cities, stolen large sums of money from their accounts, and disappeared without a trace. The woman had never been caught. Ethan stared at the blurry photo in the article. It was Vanessa. No question. Same smile, same eyes, same necklace she still wore today. His stomach twisted. The woman his father was going to marry was a criminal, a professional liar. She wasn't just using fake names, she was using fake love. And she was going to hurt his dad. He tried to tell Mark, but every time he started, his dad would smile and say things like, "It's just nerves, buddy," or "Vanessa really wants to be a good stepmom to you." Mark was so happy. Too happy. To see the truth, Ethan stopped trying to talk. Instead, he started planning. He saved the article. He printed the photos. He even recorded Vanessa on the phone one more time. He waited. He watched. And when the wedding day came, he packed everything in a small brown envelope and slipped it into his jacket. Now, sitting in the church, holding that envelope, he felt the weight of everything. Not just the paper inside, but the truth itself. The truth was heavy, and it was his alone to carry. Ethan wasn't just a boy anymore. He had become a silent protector, guarding his father from something dark and dangerous. No one had seen it. No one had believed him. But now, in this moment, he believed in himself. The guests clapped as the couple stood in front of the priest. But Ethan didn't clap. His eyes stayed sharp, focused. Because today wasn't a celebration. Today was a mission, and the moment was coming fast. Ethan sat in the church pew, heart pounding like a drum inside his chest. Around him, people smiled, whispered, and held hands. But Ethan couldn't hear them. It was like the world had gone quiet, except for one sound: his own breathing. Slow, nervous, determined inside his jacket. The envelope felt like it was burning through the fabric. It was more than just paper. Now was proof. Proof of what no one else saw. Proof of the lie standing at the altar. But how did it come to this? After discovering the fake IDs and the news article, Ethan had become obsessed with finding the truth. He knew what he saw wasn't just strange, it was dangerous. So he dug deeper. Late at night, while his dad slept, Ethan used his tablet to go through social media. He searched each of Vanessa's fake names. He followed digital crumbs she had left behind. Old wedding pictures, vacation selfies, even comments under different accounts. Some had been deleted, but others remained like echoes from her past lives. He even found a private Facebook group scammed by Vanessa Moore, filled with angry posts from people warning others about a woman who used charm like a weapon. A woman who made men fall in love, marry her, and then vanish with their money, their jewelry, even their family's trust. One man had written, "She left with over $250,000, and my heart. I still can't believe she fooled us all." That sentence stuck with Ethan. It wasn't just about the money. Vanessa didn't just steal things. She stole people's hope. She made them believe in something real, and then turned it into a lie. Ethan couldn't let that happen to his dad, not after all. They had been through together. Mark had raised Ethan alone after his mom passed away. They weren't perfect, but they were close. They had inside jokes, Saturday pizza nights, and camping trips. Mark always said, "It's just you and me, kid." But now, someone had slipped into their little world. And she came with secrets. Ethan's final piece of proof came. Just 2 days before the wedding, he heard Vanessa talking again, this time on speakerphone, by accident. Ethan had passed by her open bedroom door and paused. The voice on the other end was a man's, and what Ethan heard made his skin crawl. Same plan. The voice asked, Vanessa replied, "Yes, honeymoon." Then the bank account. He sobbed. He'll never see it coming. That was it. That was the last straw. Ethan hit the record button on his phone from behind the door and captured the full 90 seconds of the conversation. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Now, sitting in the church, all those moments flashed through his mind like scenes in a movie. The fake smiles, the quiet lies, the charm that had fooled everyone except one boy. He looked at his dad again, standing tall in front of everyone, beaming with love. Ethan's throat tightened. Mark didn't know the trap he was standing in, but Ethan did, and he was ready to spring it. The priest opened his book. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today, ... Time slowed down. Ethan's fingers touched the flap of the envelope. Sweat dripped from his forehead. Tears trembled, but his heart stood tall. His chance was coming. The moment he had feared and prepared for. Vanessa stood quietly, eyes full of fake tears. She played the part so well, but this time, her story was going to be interrupted by the boy no one expected, by the truth no one was ready for, and by a voice that would change everything. The church had never been so still. The priest's voice echoed gently through the room. "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." A few people smiled at the tradition, some chuckled softly, expecting silence. But one voice broke through the quiet. "I do." Gasps flew across the room like a gust of wind. All heads turned toward the front row, where a 12-year-old boy slowly stood up. Ethan's face was pale, but his eyes burned with a kind of fire no one had seen before. He clutched a brown envelope tightly in his small hands. Mark blinked. Ethan. Vanessa froze. Her smile twitched for a split second. The priest hesitated, unsure what to do. "Young man, do you wish to speak?" Ethan didn't answer at first. He walked forward. Each step felt heavy, like walking through water. Everyone watched in silence, unsure if it was a joke or something else entirely. He stopped a few feet away from his dad and Vanessa. Then he looked up not at Vanessa, but at Mark. "Dad, I didn't want to do this, but I have to." He opened the envelope with trembling fingers and pulled out the first photo. A wedding photo. Not Mark's wedding, someone else's, but the bride was Vanessa. Murmurs erupted. A woman in the crowd gasped, "Is that her?" Ethan laid the photo on a chair. Then he pulled out another and another. Different men, same bride. Same face. Same necklace. "I found these in her bag," Ethan said, voice shaky but clear. "She's not who she says she is. Her name's not Vanessa. Not really. She's been married before. Allah. 2 men with money. And after the wedding, she disappears." Mark looked from the photos to Vanessa, confused. What is he talking about? Vanessa laughed too quickly. "That's ridiculous. He's a child. He doesn't know what he's saying." But Ethan wasn't done. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With a few taps, he played the recording. Vanessa's voice filled the church. Double quotes, yes. Honeymoon. Then the bank account. He's soft. He'll never see it coming. Silence. Cold. Thick silence. Vanessa's face went white. Her hand dropped the bouquet. She looked around the room as if searching for the exit, like a cornered animal. Mark's hands shook. "You said that." "It was a joke," Vanessa stammered. "That could be anyone. He edited it. He's just a jealous kid." But the room wasn't listening anymore. The charm had vanished. The beautiful bride was now a stranger in white. Ethan turned to the crowd. She lied to him, and she was going to hurt him. "I tried to tell him before, but no one listened, so I had to do this." People were no longer whispering. They were nodding. Some were looking at Vanessa with disgust. Others were staring at Ethan with disbelief, at his courage, his calmness, his bravery. Mark looked at his son. His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I tried," Ethan whispered. "You were too happy. I didn't want to break your heart." But I couldn't let her break it worse. Mark's eyes filled with tears. The wedding was no longer a celebration. It had become something else, something real, raw, and unforgettable. And this was only the beginning. The church felt like it had stopped breathing. For a moment, no one moved. No one blinked. It was as if time itself had frozen. Vanessa's hands trembled. Her fingers clutched the edge of her dress like she was trying to hold on to the life she had built from lies. But the mask was off now. The soft smiles, the gentle voice, the perfect bride act, it was all gone. "What is this?" Mark whispered again, this time almost to himself. His voice cracked, not from anger, but from heartbreak. Ethan stood still, his eyes locked on his father. He wasn't proud. He wasn't angry. He just looked tired, like a boy who had been carrying the weight of a secret for too long. The truth had been heavy, and now that it was out, he wasn't sure what came next. Somewhere in the back, a guest dropped a phone. The sound echoed through the church, snapping everyone out of their trance. The whispers started. "Is that true? She's been married before. That recording? Oh my God." Vanessa stepped forward, her face pale, her voice suddenly desperate. "This is all fake. He's lying. He made it all up. You think a child can do all this? He's just jealous. He doesn't want a stepmother. That's all." But the people weren't convinced anymore. They weren't clapping, smiling, or celebrating. They were watching her, judging her. Uncovering the pieces, Mark slowly walked toward Ethan. His eyes were red, his lips tight. He looked down at the photos scattered on the chair. He picked one. Up Vanessa standing next to a man in a tuxedo, holding hands. Behind them, a sign, "Just Married Las Vegas." Mark turned to Vanessa, holding the photo in his shaking hand. This isn't you." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ethan pulled out the final piece. A printed screenshot from an online forum. A man's post from 2 years ago. Her name was Sarah Klein when I met her. She vanished 2 weeks after the wedding. Took everything from my safe and left me broken. I'll never trust again. The guests gasped again. Some stood up. Some started filming. Others stared at Vanessa like they were seeing her for the first time. Vanessa's voice turned cold. "You don't understand what you've done, boy." Ethan didn't flinch. "I understand perfectly." Mark stood between them now. "Don't you dare speak to him like that." His voice was stronger now, filled with anger and realization. The man who had once looked at Vanessa with love was now looking at her like a stranger. And the woman he had promised to marry looked suddenly small and dangerous. Vanessa stepped back, eyes darting toward the door. Her act had failed. Plan had cracked open in front of an entire room of witnesses. And Ethan, just a kid, had been the one to do it. The boy who was supposed to carry the rings had carried the truth instead. And now there was no going back. Then it all fell apart. The silence shattered like glass. People stood. Some covered their mouths. Others pointed at Vanessa, whispering in shock. The mood inside the church flipped like a switch. No more soft music. No more wedding smiles. The air was thick like something awful had just happened, and everyone could feel it. Vanessa looked around, spinning slightly, as if the walls were closing in. "This is insane," she muttered under her breath. "This wasn't supposed to happen. ... Ethan stood still, but inside, his heart was racing. His knees felt weak, but he stayed tall. The truth was finally out. Now he just had to watch what would happen next. One of the guests, a middle-aged woman sitting near the front, raised her voice. "I knew I'd seen her before. She was on the news. That woman stole from that man in Seattle." Others joined in. "Wait, you're right. I remember that story. She's a con artist. She used different names each time. That's her." Mark's hands fell to his sides, shoulders slumped. He stared at the floor like the earth had just disappeared beneath his feet. But charm, the thing that once filled the room, was gone now. She looked more like a shadow than a bride. Her eyes were wild. She wasn't in control anymore. She took one small step backward. "Don't even think about it," someone muttered near the door, to guests both large. Serious men in suits quietly walked toward the back of the church, blocking the exit without saying a word. They had seen enough. They weren't going to let her escape. Mark looked up, finally speaking again, but his voice sounded hollow. "You are going to marry me. Steal from me, ... Leave my son behind." Vanessa tried to soften her voice again. "Mark, baby, listen. To me, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be ... easy." That word "easy" hit him like a slap. His face twisted, hurt, confused, angry. "Easy," he repeated, louder this time. "Is that all I was to you?" Vanessa tried to step closer, but he moved back. Ethan didn't say a word. He just watched his father's heart break in real time. Mark had loved this woman. He had trusted her. He had believed every smile, every laugh, every sweet word. And it was all fake. Vanessa's voice turned sharp again, angry now. "You don't get it, do you? I gave you attention, love. I could have made your life better, but your stupid little brat, he ruined everything." That was it. Every guest in the room seemed to shift. It's the way she said it, the way she looked at Ethan like he was nothing. Mark turned toward her with fire in his eyes. "Get away from my son." Vanessa's mouth opened. But before she could speak again, the church doors pushed open. 2 police officers walked in. Someone had already made the call. They moved toward Vanessa calmly, but with purpose. "Ma'am, we've received a report of identity fraud. We need you to come with us." Vanessa laughed bitterly, like she still thought this was all some kind of game. But no one was laughing anymore. As the officers approached, she looked at Mark one last time, cold, silent. Then she looked at Ethan. "I'll remember this," she said. Ethan stared right back at her. "So will I." And with that, the woman who came in as a bride was let out as a criminal. The crowd watched her, leave in handcuffs. The wedding was over. But what had just happened would never be forgotten. The police car disappeared down the road, taking the woman in white with it. The sound of its tires faded into the distance, but the silence it left behind felt louder than sirens. No one knew what to do. The guests stood in small groups, still, whispering, glancing at Mark and Ethan with wide eyes and open mouths. Some people slowly started leaving, shoes echoing softly on the church floor. The wedding was over, but it hadn't ended, and it exploded. Mark stood in the aisle, motionless. His boutonniere was still pinned to his jacket, and the ring he had planned to place on Vanessa's finger was still in his pocket. But everything else, his future, his trust, his joy was gone. Ethan stood just a few steps away, unsure if he should say something. He had done what he came to do. He had told the truth. He had saved his dad. But now, as the dust settled, he wasn't sure how his father would feel. Would he be proud or angry? Mark slowly turned around, looking at his son not as a boy, but as someone who had just changed his life. "You knew," he said quietly. His voice wasn't full of rage. It was full of pain. Ethan nodded slowly. "I tried to tell you. I just didn't know how. You were so happy. I didn't want to hurt you." Mark's shoulders sagged, and I didn't want to listen. They stood there for a long moment. A father and son in the ruins of a wedding that almost became a trap. Then, Mark did something unexpected. He knelt down right there in the middle of the aisle and wrapped his arms around Ethan, tight, like he was holding something he'd almost lost forever. "You saved me," he whispered. "You saved my life." Ethan didn't answer. He just hugged him back. And for the first time that day, he felt like he could finally breathe. A few remaining guests watched from their seats. Some wiped away tears. It was no longer a story about a ruined wedding. It was a story about a boy who had done something most adults wouldn't dare to do. He had stood up. He had spoken the truth. And he had protected the one person who meant the world to him. Mark pulled away slightly and looked into his son's eyes. "I don't know how I missed it. I wanted so badly to believe she was real. I didn't see what you saw." "It's okay," Ethan said softly. "You wanted to be happy." Mark gave a sad smile. "I still am. Just for a different reason now." They stood up together and looked around the emptying church. The flowers, the music, the cake waiting in the hall, it all felt meaningless now. But somehow, that didn't matter anymore, because the real gift that day wasn't a bride or a ceremony. It was the truth and the boy who had the courage to speak it. The next morning, the sun rose quietly, as if it, too, was trying not to disturb the peace. There was no wedding hangover, no honeymoon to catch a flight for, no celebration leftovers waiting in the fridge. The house was quiet, different from yesterday's storm, but not empty. In fact, something had returned that had been missing for a while. Peace. Ethan sat on the back porch, his legs swinging from the edge of the wooden steps, still wearing the same shoes from yesterday. His hair was messy, his eyes a little tired, but there was something calm about him. Something grown. Mark came out holding 2 mugs coffee for him. Hot chocolate for Ethan, just like they used to do on cold mornings. He sat down next to his son without saying anything right away, For a few moments, they both just stared out at the quiet backyard, where nothing had changed and yet everything had. "I keep thinking about how close I came," Mark finally said. "If you hadn't said anything, if you'd stayed quiet." Ethan looked down. "I almost did. A bunch of times, but I remembered what you always say." Mark raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Real love doesn't lie." Ethan looked at him. "You used to say that about Mom." Mark stared at his son for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "She would have been proud of you, you know? You didn't just stop a wedding. You saved a life." Ethan's lips curved into the smallest smile. There were no decorations anymore. No vows, no music. But here, on this quiet morning, father and son sat side by side, closer than they had ever been. Not because they shared blood or history, but because they had faced something dark together and come out the other side stronger. Ethan didn't need applause. He didn't want attention. He had done what was right, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. And Mark, he no longer looked heartbroken. He looked awake. The wedding never happened, but something better did. A promise silent and unspoken between a father and his son. We protect each other. We tell the truth. And no matter what, we face it together.